and news that affects you.
What an academic academic in their leadership rococo, leadership rababare.
It's all the serious stuff,
but with a light-hearted twist.
I'm Sandra Ezekwesili.
And I'm Aghogho.
Join us 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. every weekday.
Right here.
On Hard Facts. Hello, Lagos. Good afternoon. Welcome to Hard Facts. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili.
Shaku! Maku!
Yeah, you're trying to
run away.
Yes, I don't. You're trying to blow my eardrums.
I was waiting for the maximum effect. Shaku Maku, everyone, and it's a fine day in the city of Lagos. Who would imagine that you could have sunshine like this?
Fam! After the kind of weekend we had, I went away for the weekend because I was Employee of the Month in August.
Yeah.
And I finally took my weekend away because that's one of the things that Nigeria Info, Cool FM, Wazobe FM gifts you when you win Employee of the Month. And so I took my 2 days off, went to the fancy hotel.
You went by canoe?
No, because it wasn't raining when I left, So I went to the hotel, had a nice time, slept in a nice bed, ate nice meals, breakfast and dinner and lunch, just had a nice time.
Never and how's it said? And live happily ever after.
It did not, no. So I went there Friday night, Saturday night. By the time it was Sunday afternoon, I even did late checkout because I just felt like, I'll just drive gingerly to my house. Like things are so good, I didn't even realize it was raining for the 2 days I was in the hotel. Guy, as soon as I drove out of the hotel, I said, "Oh, Kuku kill me." Like all the stress that had melted out of my body, it just came back into my body.
Did you?
And then to make matters worse, when I now got to my estate,
you found your estate.
No, I did not. That's the problem. I got to my estate and it was missing. And then I tried to remember, where the potholes were and where they weren't. And it turns out that the 2 days wiped away some of the memory. And so my car sank into a pothole. Oh. And so all the relaxation just melted away into Lagos flood.
Like they say in German, ich bin Krankenhauswies.
That's not what Germans say. But yeah, that's the weekend I had. And we hope you had a better weekend than I did. How was your weekend, Aghogho?
It was excellent. I was watching the rain and watching the people get drowned in the rain and come out of it again.
Hopefully nobody drowned.
No, no one did drown, thankfully.
Except my car. I need to buy an SUV. I kept
watching the skies open and down. I suddenly realized that, the rain that does the most damage, not the one that falls with a lot of noise.
It's not. It's
the
really
one that,
not.
The drizzle is heavy.
And just doesn't stop.
Doesn't stop, yeah. So that's what happened all through.
It was terrible. It was so terrible. Well, we have a lot to catch up on.
Taking showers used to be your bar. That's what we were singing under the rain. Cause the shower situation stimulates my imagination.
Anyways, today is October 20th. Every 5 years, this day is officially World Statistics Day by the UN. Next official one is next year. But we're still observing Statistics Day here on Nigeria Info. I mean, statistics are hard facts, and hard facts are important, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it just takes my mind back to, I have a background in data and analysis and statistics, models and stuff. Have you ever heard of Lagrangian theorem?
No, I make sure to run away from any statistics sounding thing.
Simple linear regression analysis and all of those sort of things. But it's good. I know that the planners do their things and statisticians don't do their things by half. Imagine celebrating a day once every 5 years to show you how far you've failed or you've done well. So you can go back and say 5 years ago we celebrated this event and this is
how much data we've gathered.
And this is where we were. 5 years after, we're worse off from where we were, or we're better for those countries that have put those data to good work. So we look forward to having discussion this afternoon, of course, with the listeners who will join in the conversation that began this morning.
Well, it's important to not miss hard facts. Aghogho and I are here every day. We're breaking things down
Monday
for you.
Friday.
Yeah, well. And we're bringing insights to all the important topics. We bring them for you, break them down, give you the facts, and you can form an informed opinion. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter is where you can catch any of our past shows. We've got a great show today. Lagos and Ogun States discuss opening Oyan Oyan Dam for flood relief. That's probably why you're experiencing all the floods. Kaduna State Government busts yet another rehabilitation center where people were chained for 8 years. And police confirmed that an ACP was abducted and has been rescued. What's on Checkpoint, Aghogho?
Yeah, so on Checkpoint, we've got to do a flip quickly. And there's this story which is going on now. It's the Situation Room. You know, the role they play during the elections and, you know, making sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed.
That's right.
With respect to how the process is gone, and
That's
then they
right.
act sort of as arbiters, looking at what is happening from the electoral observer's point of view. Now, they're saying that a statement from Clement Wankwo, who is the head of the group, says that for elections coming up in Bayelsa and Kogi State, which we will be covering, we've got correspondents lined up for those elections coming up next month, that if we're going to deploy the military, then they should take orders from INEC, which is still a bit of controversy around elections and that. So we speak with an ex-military officer as well as with Yaga. Samson Itodo will be joining us in the conversation so we can rub heads and palms on this one.
And cause some sparks.
Yeah.
On the Big Hard Fact, we're going to look at the role of statistics in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And then we'll wrap up with I Beg to Differ. As usual, throughout the show, our newsroom is bringing you the latest updates from the world of news, sports, entertainment, and business. Let's get right into the Big Three.
This is the Big Three
The Big Three on Hard Facts.
on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
On the Big Three, we bring you stories that everyone is talking about right now. What can Lagos State do to reduce flooding? That's the first question. And how can people be held captive for 8 years without the police knowing? And how could a police ACP get kidnapped? Let's get into these stories. The Lagos and Ogun State governments are in talks about the possibility of opening the Oyan Dam to reduce flooding in the two states. The Oyan Dam sits in a tributary in a tributary of the Ogun River. It retains water to generate electricity and enable fishing. However, during the rainy season, the dam holds more water than its capacity, which leads to flooding of nearby communities in Lagos and Ogun. According to members of these communities, the flooding has become worse in recent years. When it rains, it pours. Aghogho.
Absolutely pours, and we've been having reports, horror stories from a number of, I'm sure you've been seeing a lot of those visuals going out on our Facebook page, on our Nigeria Info web, as well as our Twitter space, all of those that you've also seen on TV. Also, interestingly, it has been comments from the Environment and Water Resources Commissioner, Tunji Bello, who says officials of the state are working on different measures to remove the constriction and blockades, as well as the free, easy passage of the resultant flooding. So, two rivers here, basins, involved in this Wahala, the Ogun or Oshun River Basin Authority, and they want them to release the water gradually. But it's one thing for the rhetoric to be out there; it's another thing for the impact to be felt. Like I've seen a number of reports, most notably the one in Isheri, where canoes have become the order of the day. People transport from one point to the other, and 300 housing in all was the interview I saw where the estate manager was saying that all of those buildings are at risk now because they have all been submerged at least by a third. And it could get worse because I think this has been going on since August. You know, it's just come to our notice now. And some point we raise, especially with planning, is questions that have been asked. What was the state government going to do, with all the state government going to do with areas, people living in low plain areas, when the warning from NEMA did come around sometime late July or early August, saying that things were going to start to happen in Lagos State, at least of all the states that were mentioned, to be prone to flooding.
You know, and all over the world, when dam reservoirs get too full, there's a process for opening the dam to prevent flooding. So it's not an unusual thing that's about to happen. Some observers would even say that what's unusual is that it has taken the state governments this long to take the decision. Apparently, from what we're hearing, Aghogho, this flooding has been happening for years. However, a bigger question is whether or not the two state governments have the right to open or close the dams on their own. Usually the federal governments have a say over when dams are opened. That's why we have the various river basin authorities, for example, because of their impact on flooding, on river levels, on electricity. Dams are very, very sensitive. So the federal government tends to be involved in their operation. And this Oyan Dam, this issue brings up the Lagos flood problem in general. Oyan Dam and its overflow is not the only reason why we get flooded in Lagos. I mean, Aghogho has mentioned planning. For example, when we talk about the island, the experts will tell you the main reason for flooding is what they call evacuation. There are two aspects of this. First, the canals are blocked or they're not draining properly into the lagoons. And second, the lagoons are not draining properly into the sea. And that's because Lagos is below sea level. And Lagos is not the only city in the world that's below sea level, by the way. You have places like Amsterdam that are even lower than Lagos. And the reason they don't get flooded like we do here is because, like Aghogho says, they used engineering to solve the problem. So, for example, for Amsterdam, the Dutch have built very large walls that are called dikes. And these walls are all along the coast and they stop ocean water from rising and flooding Amsterdam. Apart from the dikes, the Dutch have built massive canals, some of them mechanized, to channel rainwater and river water away from Amsterdam. So they did not fold their hands and say, oh, we're below sea level. They used technology to solve the problem. And this technology is decades old, Aghogho. Yeah. It's not something that was found yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. Decades old. A couple of... shortly, I was just going through some information, and typical physical planning going on everywhere in the world are old problems that have been solved by new tools and techniques. So they know, for example, areas like we were joking 5 years ago, how they could extrapolate and say that in the next 5 years, based on, never mind the guys who say we've not done the census in the last how many years, we can know through the percentages, for example.
Or those who say that we've never had a census.
We have a census. So the idea of the census is so that we can have percentages to know we can work. And many times they're always very close, and a plus of 5% on both sides. You can be sure of your accuracy and know exactly how many people you're going to have in an area. So they knew people were moving to the low-lying areas and allow them to keep buying all these lands, land grabbers or not, and people have begun to live in areas which originally designed as setbacks. Because some people think that Lagos was never planned in the first instance, but Lagos was planned in the beginning. But because of flagrant abuse of the planning laws and standards, this is what we're facing now. So people living in all these areas that they should not have been living in the first instance either will have to relocate or at the end of the day face the wrath of nature like is happening.
What do you think the government can do to solve the flooding problem? What do you think we can do about the technology? Why do you think we've not invested in technology like dikes and canals to solve our flooding problems? I mean, these ones are not, knocking buildings down. These ones sound like things that we can actually do. Let us know after the break. Our numbers are 01277 0993 1993 2993 and 3993.
Stay right here on the Big Three on 99.3 Nigeria Info. This is the Big Three.
The Big Three. On Hard Facts.
On 99.3 Nigeria Info.
My name is Sandra Ezekwesili.
And I am Aghogho Oboh.
You're listening to Hard Facts. We're asking for our first topic on the Big Three today. Why do you think the government hasn't invested in technology like dikes and canals to solve our flooding problem? We told you that the Lagos and Ogun State governments are discussing opening the Oyan Dam for flood relief. Honesty is in Ikeja. Let's talk to you now. Thank you for calling us.
Thank you. God bless you.
Yes, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Sandra.
Good afternoon. Go ahead, Honesty.
Yes, the government, the governor, they have the right to open the dam.
Okay.
But in Lagos flooding, it's not from the dam because Lagos is a place that they can build house. Even if they give them chance, even the Terminal Lagoon, they can fill it and build house. So if they build house where the water is, where the rain fell, it will still go back to that place. You understand?
Okay.
So they should avoid building house near canals, near where water is, so they can be able to avoid all this flooding in Lagos.
All right, Honesty, thanks for calling. I Square is in Ojo says our politicians lack the merit. I Square.
What I'm talking about is that politics has killed merit.
Okay.
Politics and favoritism, they have killed merit. Because if you have the right people there, and Mr. President is ready to listen to that person, they're going to come up with a template that will address this flooding in Lagos. And also, let me go to Kaduna State. I think they should investigate the politicians or the governor in Kaduna State, because why is it that in only Kaduna State that they have all the slave ports that we are going to find people every time they're be kidnapped.
Well, we also got in Katsina also.
Thank you.
Right.
All right, I Square. Mr. Darlington is the last call we'll take. Says it's a problem of disorganization. Welcome to the show, Mr. Darlington. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, my dear Sandra. How are you?
Very well.
How was the weekend?
It was good until it wasn't.
Was your house flooded?
Yes, it was.
Aghogho.
Hey, good afternoon.
You cannot be there and this is happening, no?
No, she'll have to move to like 6th, 7th floor to avoid this thing happening.
It's okay. Sandra, you remember one refinery they are doing in Lakeside? Did you see the landmark that refinery has taken in a land or waterlogged area like Lekki? Nobody paid attention to environmental assessment. As if that one is not enough. Look at what they are doing at Eko Atlantic City. Driving away water to build a house where 500 superhuman beings are going to live. Nobody is thinking of what will happen tomorrow. Sandra, have you imagined what will happen if we should experience Hurricane Katrina?
Let's not put that into the universe.
Do you know what will happen? We are playing with fire. Now they think that they are displaying wealth. They are celebrating and living in Lekki. What is the essence of living there when you cannot go to your house when one rain drop on the ground? What is the essence? It's all about planlessness. That is why I keep telling people who say Lagos is a center of excellence. I keep saying it. The day they will open up Lagos and tell us what is going on in Lagos, people are going to cry. Look at how they don't do things with arrogance, without caring about nature. And you want nature to come and
be nice to you.
Be nice to you at the end of the day. It's not possible.
Okay, Mr. Darlington, thanks for calling. Share your thoughts. Over the weekend, police raided yet another rehabilitation with hostages, this time in Kaduna State. The raid, which was led by Governor Nasser El-Rufai himself, freed 147 men, women, and children. The State Commissioner for Human Services and Social Development, Hajia Hafsat Baba, said that some of the victims had been kept in chains for 8 years. This is at least the third case in less than a month ago.
And it's copycat of what we've had. And what makes it frightening is these are not recent cases. This has been going on for a while. I guess it's been the biggest public open secret in Kaduna State. And maybe even in Katsina where the other case was found. And then we found the same horror stories like in the previous cases. Chained legs and hands, and they had have to call welders to help free them. You know, I mean, it's simply incredible. And the consequences are there. I understand a number of them have now mental health issues. I mean, who wouldn't have if you locked up 8 years in chains and would have now been referred to the Federal Neuropsychiatric Hospital in the Kaduna State. So on the one hand, I've also heard that the person behind this facility has also been arrested and apprehended. But I wish they can go deeper to find and investigate, one, whether there are more centers where this has happened. Two, whether there's any coordination between these centers and the way they have run like a syndicate. And very importantly, what happens to the people who've lived in these places? Because now, I think in the first one, we didn't get to talk much about the neuropsychiatric nature of the problems people are going to face having lived in these conditions for years. So what happens to them afterwards? Is this just being treated as just one, a criminal offense, but also to a health hazard we're looking at also?
When we talked about this last week, I said that it should be a source of public concern, that there are so many places where people are kept chained in rooms. According to Kaduna government, some of them have been held captive for 8 years. And I asked the question last week when we were talking about Katsina, and I need to ask it about Kaduna as well. How could these alleged atrocities have been happening for up to 8 years and the authorities were not aware? Aghogho says open secret. Is that what it was? And when I asked that question last week, a lot of people said it's because the police do not have the resources and the personnel to truly patrol the public space. So a lot of things are happening and the security agencies are not truly aware. And then we had a conversation, this same conversation last Wednesday on the glass ceiling when we're talking about baby factories. And it's basically the same situation. These baby factories, like these so-called rehab centers, are operating in urban areas and nobody is aware. Nobody is wiser. And I'm still hung up on that point. These places are operating in urban spaces and they are going undetected for years. Another reason, according to our callers last week, was that people don't pay attention to what their neighbors are up to anymore. Everybody minds their business. And we don't really have this system anymore where people see something suspicious and report to the authorities. And I have to ask why you think these types of torture chambers or rehab centers or baby factories are going unnoticed and unreported. Now, we don't have time because we've got the guys at Riley Academy joining us at 3:45. So you can send your answers to us on Facebook and WhatsApp. Why do you think these types of torture chambers and rehab centers and baby factories are going unnoticed and unreported? Is it because the security agencies lack the resources, or is it because the public isn't reporting? Why is there a disconnect between the public and the authorities? WhatsApp is also available for you. WhatsApp is 080-959-75805. We'll take the comments that we can before Raleigh Academy joins us at 3:45. From police rescuing citizens to police rescuing police. In our third story, the police command has confirmed that ACP Musa Rabo, who was abducted on Saturday, has been rescued. The command said Rabo was traveling in mufti without a police escort when he was abducted, and that he was, quote, positionally unlucky at the time of the incident, end of quote. The command pointed out that Rabo was not targeted because he was a police officer. The rescue was carried out jointly by Kaduna and Niger Police Commands, Zone 7 Command, Headquarters and Special Forces. And it reminds me of something we often say, who watches the watchmen? But in this case, who rescues the rescuers, Aghogho?
The police in this instance have had to rescue their own. Be the latest in the series of kidnappings, high-profile kidnappings that have happened. And so if it's what is good for the goose, equally good for the gander, people who've been arrested, unfortunately, who have no choice but to go in mufti all through their lives and subject to this sort of thing. So the situation in the northwestern part of the country, in this instance here, running through the north central, is cause for great concern. So on the one hand, if you have rehabilitation centers supposed to work to prevent people from being lured into the world of crime, they get them treated in such a horrendous way that what they were being prevented from is exactly what they're being turned to, which is no small reason why correction centers or the prisons haven't done exactly what they were supposed to do. And then the one people have turned to as their own solution has also worsened the situation for them. So small wonder, you look at the crimes happening in Kaduna, and you point back to what is going on, maybe with the unemployment and the high levels of unplanned population. So, people, a lot of social commentators will argue that the ingredients that have led for abduction and kidnappings to continue haven't in any way reduced. So this will be the one, and then the next one afterwards.
What I found most interesting about the police statement is the way they pointed out that he wasn't targeted because he was a police officer. The statement seemed to be going to great length to say, look, he didn't have his full police escort with him. If not, this would not have happened.
The police say during the incident whether any ransom was paid to the abductors. No, I think it's a template usually put out. This is exactly what we're going to say after the person has been released.
Except for this particular one, they were, making sure to let us know, oh no, if he had his police escort, this would not have happened. It's almost as if they wanted to assure us that kidnappers are not yet bold enough to target the police. However, a lot of citizens that I am seeing on social media talk about this are saying that this is besides the point. As far as most people are concerned, the police's statement appears to be conceding that ordinary citizens can expect to be kidnapped. People are saying the police is telling us that unless you can move with a police escort, kidnapping is a risk. Now, of course, the police rescued ACP Rabo, and we are happy that he's home. But again, most Nigerians are looking at the nature of the rescue. They're looking at the fact that the rescue needed officers from 2 state commands, a zonal headquarters and special forces. And Nigerians are asking, if I were the one who were kidnapped, would the police be ready to dedicate those same resources to rescuing me? Or is this only reserved for police officers and government VIPs? And truly, it's a question that needs to be asked, because we've seen numerous kidnapped cases in the past year, Aghogho, who were eventually reunited with their families. And eventually it was the family and friends of the victims who had to pay ransoms, right? There was no police rescue. I remember a few weeks ago, I talked about kidnappings and ransoms on the big 3. And so many people called in with their stories of how somebody they knew got kidnapped, how the ransom was paid. Some even went as far as saying that police were contacted and police said to them, we don't know that what we can do. And then you also remember the NYSC telling corps members that if they are kidnapped, NYSC will not ransom them. So even a government agency like the NYSC was not talking about rescue by the police. Their mind went straight to ransom, right? And it just worries the mind, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it does. It's of big concern. I'm thinking also too many times when people get abducted. I've had several cases that have never made it to the pages of the papers. And many times people don't even go to the police to help resolve the matter. Whether it's in thinking that they fear the police may botch it or not, maybe it's for their own personal reasons. They think that they stand a better chance dealing with these matters themselves. But one of the major reasons I've heard people say why kidnapping has thrived, say for the economic reasons, which is a major factor. People are going through such a hard time and have the incentive to commit crime has become such a big bonus for them to do this. And on the other hand, it's such a thriving business because people are paying ransom for the release of their loved ones many times. So this is one thing that has to be nipped at the bud. Otherwise, you're going to keep having this happen over and over again.
Yes, indeed. You let us know on Facebook and YouTube. That's where we're actually streaming this, not Facebook. On YouTube, let us know if you think security agencies can keep you safe from kidnap. Because this story of ACP Rabo is a good time for us to discuss the capacity of the police in particular and government in general to keep us safe from kidnap and rescue us if necessary. So do you believe that they can keep you safe from kidnap? And what do you think needs to be done to improve the safety and security of Nigerians, especially travelers? What do you think about the fast rescue of ACP Rabo compared to kidnap cases that you've heard about? YouTube is Nigeria Info FM, Facebook as well, Nigeria Info FM. We got a comment talking about the flood in Lagos. Cyprian, thank you so much for sending it in. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to look at that message because Rally Academy is up next. And after that, Checkpoint with Aghogho.
Hard facts. We'll be right back.